They thought they had you figured out. They thought they knew every move you'd make. But chosen one, you made one unseen move that shattered every plan, every trap, every spiritual pattern they set against you. This is the moment they realized your silence was power, your patience was strategy, and your victory was inevitable. There comes a moment in the life of a chosen one when everything around you seems to move in slow motion. You look back at the patterns that once controlled you, cycles of doubt, fear, betrayal, misunderstanding, and you realize that somewhere along the way, without even announcing it, you made a move that shattered them all. Not with force, not with noise, but with precision and spiritual mastery that only comes from walking the road you've walked. People didn't see it coming because they never understood the depth of your patience, your silence, or your vision. While they were busy playing the same games, repeating the same cycles, you were watching, learning, and quietly positioning yourself for a move that would free you from it all. And now, that moment has arrived. The unseen move wasn't just about protecting yourself. It was about stepping into a higher frequency where those old patterns can't survive. You didn't just break the cycle, you rewrote the rules of the game. Before we dive deep, I want you to commit to something right now. Stay with me until the very end of this message, because every word is designed to align your spirit with the breakthrough that's already unfolding for you. As you listen, I want you to write your most sincere, heartfelt wishes in the comments, along with the number 777, to seal them into the flow of divine energy. This is more than just typing words. It's declaring to the universe and to your Creator what you're ready to receive. Every wish you write is an energy you release, and that energy comes back multiplied. Subscribe if you haven't already, because this journey we're on together is only going deeper from here. What makes this moment so powerful is that it was never about impressing anyone or proving them wrong. The unseen move you made came from wisdom earned through storms that would have destroyed anyone else. You endured seasons where the same challenges returned again and again, disguised in different faces, different opportunities, and different temptations. You learned how to see them for what they were, recycled traps meant to keep you locked in the same vibration. But instead of reacting the way you once did, you paused. You took a step back, letting them believe they still had the upper hand. You didn't argue. You didn't explain. You didn't fight in the way they expected. You simply shifted inward. You aligned yourself with a higher truth, one that couldn't be touched by manipulation, intimidation, or envy. That's what they didn't see. That while they were looking for obvious moves, you were cultivating spiritual strength in silence. Breaking a spiritual pattern isn't always dramatic in the way the world measures drama. It can be as subtle as saying no to something you would have said yes to before. It can be as quiet as walking away without a word when every part of your flesh wants to stay and prove a point. It can be as invisible as changing the way you think about yourself, no longer accepting the false identities people tried to force on you. That's the kind of move you made. The kind that doesn't just break one chain, but shatters the mold they tried to keep you in. And because of that, you've stepped into a timeline where the old rules don't apply. The people, places, and energies that once had a hold on you can't even recognize you anymore, because you've transformed in a way that their eyes aren't trained to see. What's happening right now in your spirit is something few will ever understand, and that's exactly why it feels so isolating at times. The patterns you broke weren't just personal, they were generational. These cycles weren't born yesterday. They've been running in the background of your family line, in the environments you grew up in, and in the unspoken agreements people made with limitation, fear, and spiritual blindness. Every time you refused to go back to what you'd already outgrown, you were dismantling an entire framework that had kept people bound for decades, maybe even centuries. And here's the thing, they don't celebrate you for it. They won't throw you a party for finally choosing yourself. In fact, many will resent you because in breaking your own chains, you've revealed theirs. People feel exposed when they see you walking freely in areas where they still feel trapped. Your decision to move differently is a mirror they can't ignore. It forces them to confront the truth that they've been cycling through the same issues, choosing the same pain, and justifying the same excuses. And rather than being inspired to break free themselves, some will project that discomfort onto you. They'll call you cold, selfish, or changed in a way they don't like. But deep down, what they really feel is fear. Fear that the way they've been living is no longer sustainable now that someone close to them has proved there's another way. You didn't just observe the patterns, you studied them. You saw how they started, how they repeated, and how they disguised themselves. You learned to recognize the moment when the pattern tried to pull you back in, whether through an old habit, a toxic conversation, or a seemingly harmless opportunity that carried the same energy as a past trap. You started to see that spiritual warfare isn't always about dramatic attacks. It's about subtle invitations back into places you've been delivered from. And because you caught those moments early, you were able to respond in a way that confused every plan meant to keep you stuck. The move you made didn't just happen in the physical, it happened in the unseen. Your decision was made in prayer, in self-reflection, in quiet moments when no one was watching. You confronted the part of yourself that still longed for the comfort of the familiar, even when the familiar was killing your growth. You surrendered the need to be understood, the desire to explain, and the urge to hold on to things that couldn't go where you were going. This is what made your move so powerful. It wasn't about escaping people, it was about escaping a mindset. And once that shift happened inside you, there was no going back. Now, people are left wondering how you did it. They can't point to a single obvious action because your transformation wasn't loud. It was internal, gradual, and deeply rooted. One day, you were just different. You didn't react to the same provocations. You didn't show up to the same arguments. You didn't invest your energy in places that gave nothing back. That silence, that restraint, that refusal to engage on their level, that was the checkmate. They had no countermove for that. You changed the entire game without ever announcing that you were playing one. When you reached the point where the old games no longer tempted you, that's when the real shift happened. It wasn't that the traps disappeared. Oh, they're still there. The people still talk, the tests still come, and the energy still tries to pull you in. But now, you see them for what they are before they even get close. The moment something feels heavy, manipulative, or draining, your spirit recognizes it instantly, and you remove yourself without hesitation. This is why they're unsettled, because before, they could predict your moves. They knew what words to say to trigger you, which buttons to press to get a reaction, and what situations to create to keep you distracted. But now, you've gone silent where you used to defend yourself. You've stayed still where you used to chase answers. You've smiled and walked away where you once would have argued. And that quiet control, it's unnerving to them, because now they can't measure your next step. You've removed their access to your energy. Without even realizing it, you've shifted the entire power dynamic, not by force, but by awareness. And awareness is dangerous to anything built on manipulation, lies, or dependency. Here's the thing about breaking spiritual patterns. It's not just about you leaving a situation, it's about the situation no longer having a way to live inside you. That's the unseen move. Anyone can physically walk away, but if they carry the same mindset, the same emotional reactions, and the same spiritual blind spots, the pattern will just reappear somewhere else. You've done the deeper work. You've gone into the root of the pattern, pulled it out, and refused to replant it. That's why nothing feels the same anymore, even when the world around you hasn't changed much. But with this new level of spiritual clarity comes something you didn't expect. People testing your boundaries just to see if they can break them. They will throw shade, spread rumors, or try to bring up old wounds, not because they matter, but because they're desperate to find out if the old you still exists. And when they realize they can't pull you back into that version of yourself, it forces them to face the fact that they no longer have any control over you. Some will respect you for it, even if they don't admit it. They'll watch you from a distance, curious about how you manage to get out. Others will resent you more, because they can't handle that you've closed the door without locking yourself in bitterness. You didn't just leave, you left in peace. You didn't seek revenge, you didn't try to expose anyone, and you didn't need to win their approval before moving on. That, more than anything, is the ultimate power move. What they can't grasp is that you didn't just get lucky or find an escape. You dismantled an entire cycle that had been running for years, maybe even generations. This isn't just about you walking away from a toxic job, relationship, or environment. It's about you breaking the invisible agreements your spirit once made with fear, scarcity, and self-doubt. Those old contracts have been ripped apart. You no longer trade your peace for temporary acceptance. You no longer hand over your worth just to be tolerated. And most importantly, you no longer need anyone's permission to be whole. That's where the real threat lies. Because when you no longer operate by the same rules they do, they can't use those rules against you. Your silence becomes louder than their accusations. Your calm presence speaks louder than their attempts to provoke you. They throw chaos your way, expecting you to panic, but instead, you slow down, breathe, and let the storm pass without inviting it inside. It's like playing chess with someone who realizes you're not even on the same board anymore. You've taken the game to an entirely different level. And yet, they will keep trying. Why? Because some people don't want to adapt. They want you to revert. They need the old version of you to come back because that version was predictable. That version gave them something to feed off. Now, without your energy to consume, they're left with themselves, and that's the last place they want to be. They'll create false narratives, twist your words, or even mimic your growth just to see if they can lure you back into reacting. But when they find only stillness, only a steady, grounded presence, it scares them. Because here's the truth. People are far more intimidated by peace than by aggression. Aggression is loud, obvious, and easy to attack. Peace, on the other hand, is untouchable. It doesn't give them a point of entry. They can't measure it. They can't control it. They can't predict it. And when someone can't predict you, they can't manipulate you. That's why this unseen move you've made is so powerful. It's not flashy, but it's permanent. You see, breaking a spiritual pattern is like pulling a thread that unravels an entire fabric. Once it's gone, it can't be rewoven the same way. Sure, people may try to stitch it back together, but the original design will never be restored. And that's exactly what's happened in your life. The original design that kept you trapped has been dismantled beyond repair. When you broke that pattern, you didn't just change your life. You shifted the spiritual atmosphere around you. Every room you walk into now feels different because you bring a new frequency with you. It's like walking into a space that used to be dimly lit and suddenly turning on a floodlight. People don't even have to understand what happened to notice something has changed. They feel it in their bones before they can name it. That's why some are drawn to you without knowing why, while others feel an unexplainable urge to avoid you. Your energy has become a mirror, reflecting back to people exactly where they are in their own journey. The irony is that you didn't do any of this to get attention. In fact, the entire transformation happened when you stopped trying to be seen and started focusing on simply being. You let go of proving yourself, and instead you became rooted in truth. That kind of authenticity is rare. It disrupts every counterfeit thing around it. People who have built their identity on illusions find your presence uncomfortable because it exposes cracks in their own foundation. And here's the thing. Those cracks were always there. You just made them impossible to ignore. That's why your unseen move was so brilliant. It wasn't about a grand announcement or a dramatic confrontation. It was about quiet, deliberate action that could not be reversed. You cut ties without spectacle, walked away without slamming doors, and healed wounds without posting progress updates. That subtlety is what made it so devastating to those who wanted to control you. They didn't even realize you were gone until it was too late. And now they're scrambling. They try to recreate the old dynamic, but it's like trying to put shattered glass back together. It will never be the same. You can see it in their eyes when they look at you now. There's a mix of confusion, frustration, and maybe even fear, because they know something inside you has been fortified. They can't name it, but they can feel it. And deep down, they understand that if they can't access your mind or your emotions, they've lost every ounce of influence they once had over you. This is the power of spiritual mastery, not controlling others, but controlling yourself. You have reached a point where your choices are no longer reactive. They are intentional. You respond instead of react. You observe instead of absorb. You stand firm instead of being swept into the chaos. That is the checkmate moment, when your very stillness becomes the move that ends the game. The moment you stepped into this new version of yourself, the game changed forever. You no longer operate from the same rules that once kept you trapped. You've rewritten your spiritual code, quietly, invisibly, and yet so powerfully that nothing around you could remain the same. It's almost like you slipped into a parallel reality, one where your boundaries are unshakable, your discernment razor-sharp, and your peace non-negotiable. And the people who once fed off your openness or your need to explain yourself, they don't know how to approach you anymore. They keep trying to speak to the old version of you, but she or he no longer lives here. Your silence now speaks louder than any words could. Before, you might have felt the need to defend your decisions, to justify your actions, to make others understand your heart. But now, you've learned the liberating truth. Understanding is not a requirement for your progress. You no longer perform your healing for an audience, and that in itself has made your moves even more impactful. Every step you take now is intentional, grounded in a deep connection to your intuition and guided by forces that work in your favor, even when you can't see the full picture. And here's where it gets even more unsettling for them. You can read the room without saying a word. You can feel the weight of unspoken intentions, the shift in the air when someone is not being genuine, and the subtle energy of manipulation before it even reaches you. This ability, this heightened spiritual perception, makes it almost impossible for anyone to run the same old games on you. They know it, even if they can't explain it. And when people realize they can no longer control or deceive you, they either rise to meet your level or they remove themselves entirely. The unseen move that broke the pattern was not just about walking away. It was about reclaiming your throne without having to announce it. You no longer sit in rooms where your spirit feels heavy. You no longer give your energy to conversations that are designed to drain you. And you no longer seek validation from people who never valued you in the first place. Your very presence now demands respect, not because you're asking for it, but because it's impossible to treat you as anything less. What's even more powerful is that your transformation has created ripples far beyond what you can see. Someone you've never met might be inspired by the changes you've made. Someone who's been watching you from a distance may have found the courage to break their own chains because they saw you do it first. That's the quiet influence of a chosen one. You don't just change your own life, you become a living example of what's possible. Every spiritual pattern that once held you captive wasn't just a random set of experiences. It was a carefully woven web meant to keep you small, distracted, and doubting yourself. Breaking free from it was not an accident. It was the result of you tuning in so deeply to your inner guidance that the very energy holding those patterns together began to unravel. You stopped reacting the way they expected you to react. You stopped giving your energy to arguments that didn't deserve your voice. You stopped showing up in spaces that secretly thrived on your exhaustion. That was the moment the system broke. What's remarkable is that you didn't need a dramatic confrontation or a public declaration to dismantle these cycles. You simply shifted your energy, and the ripple effect was undeniable. People started feeling the distance. They couldn't access you the way they used to. The doors they once walked through without knocking are now locked, not out of spite, but out of sacred protection. And those who relied on the old patterns to control you now find themselves fumbling, unsure how to even approach you without revealing their true intentions. The beauty of breaking a spiritual pattern is that it doesn't just free you, it alters the trajectory of everyone connected to you. Generations before you may have been bound by similar cycles, whether it was cycles of fear, lack, or self-betrayal. By choosing differently, you became the one who stopped the repetition. You became the one who said, "This ends with me." And in doing so, you sent a wave of freedom not just forward into your future, but backward into the very roots of your bloodline. But here's what they don't understand. The power of your unseen move is that it's not something they can trace or undo. It's not an action they can gossip about or a plan they can sabotage because it was done on the level of spirit. You aligned with something far greater than their understanding, and once that alignment happened, their influence lost its grip. They can try to mimic your steps, but without the same heart, the same purity of intention, it will never carry the same power. Now, your life is no longer a constant battle for survival. It's a steady walk in clarity. You can see opportunities where others see obstacles. You can find stillness in moments that would send most people spiraling. And you know that your path is not determined by who is cheering you on or who is against you. Your path is determined by the unseen hand that has been guiding you all along, whispering when to move, when to wait, and when to step fully into the light. They never understood that while they were busy trying to read you, you were busy rewriting the rules of the entire game. Every move they thought they had predicted, You altered without warning, not through chaos, but through precision. The patterns they relied on crumbled beneath the weight of your silence. Your lack of reaction was not weakness. It was the sharpest weapon in your arsenal. You let them believe they knew you. You let them believe they had mapped your every decision. But the reality was that you had already shifted to a frequency they could not hear. It was as if you were playing in a realm they could never access, no matter how hard they tried to decode your steps. The more they studied you, the more they confused themselves, mistaking their own assumptions for truth, while you quietly dismantled every scheme they built. And this is why the unseen move carries such devastating power. It is invisible until it's already too late. You didn't need to fight loudly. You didn't need to declare your strategy, because victory was never about overpowering them in the open. It was about making sure their own momentum destroyed them. They couldn't see where you were headed, so every attempt to block you became another step toward their own defeat. They thought you were standing still, but you were positioning yourself so carefully that when you finally made your move, it would appear as if it came from nowhere. That's why their reaction was so explosive, because the blow didn't land from where they were looking. This is the nature of spiritual warfare that most people will never understand. Power isn't always shown in the obvious strikes, the loud declarations, the visible victories. Sometimes it's in the ability to move without being seen, to shift the course without leaving a trace. And in doing so, you broke the cycle they thought would trap you forever. The patterns they used to manipulate others, fear, distraction, provocation, failed against you because you refused to respond on their terms. You didn't match their energy. You replaced the entire playing field with your own. This was the unseen move, the one that ripped apart every repeating loop they tried to bind you with. Now they are left with the aftermath. Confusion is their new companion. They replay every interaction, every conversation, every glance, trying to figure out where they went wrong. But you know the truth. They never had control to begin with. They only had illusions, and you shattered them by refusing to feed them. That's why the shift feels so final for them. They can sense that something has been sealed, something irreversible has taken place, but they can't explain it. And that inability to explain, to track, to reverse, is what breaks them the most. You didn't just win, you changed the entire nature of the game. And that's something they will never recover from, because it means they can never play against you the same way again. In their minds, they believed they had seen all there was to see, that every card you held had been revealed. But the truth is, you never even brought your full hand to the table. You let them think they understood your rhythm while you quietly dismantled the very board they were playing on. It was patience, wisdom, and restraint that made you untouchable, not raw aggression. You didn't need to rush. You didn't need to prove anything. And in that stillness, you became unstoppable. Now they're faced with the reality that your silence was never weakness. It was your greatest strength. Your ability to observe without revealing, to move without being traced, is what dismantled every spiritual and emotional snare they set for you. You saw every pattern they tried to weave around your life, and you refused to step into it. They wanted you reactive. You stayed reflective. They wanted you distracted. You stayed precise. They wanted you to fight in the open, where they could predict your movements, but you refused, striking only when the moment was so perfect that the result was inevitable. The unseen move didn't just break their control, it broke their confidence. And for people who rely on manipulation, that loss is fatal. They're left replaying every detail, desperate to find where they could have stopped you. But the truth is, There was never a moment they could have. You were always ahead, always operating in a realm they couldn't touch. And now, even if they try again, they will never find you where you once were. You've evolved beyond their reach. Chosen one, this is the point where you stand in your power fully. You no longer have to explain your path, your decisions, or your silence. Those who are meant to understand will see the wisdom in your ways. Those who aren't will remain confused. Either way, the victory is yours, not because you destroyed them, but because you refused to be destroyed. You preserved your spirit, you kept your vision clear, and you made the move that no one saw coming. And that's why the patterns are broken forever. Walk forward now knowing that what you've done cannot be undone, and the realm you've stepped into is one where only those with pure intentions can follow. The checkmate has been made, and you've already moved on to the next game. Chosen one, your unseen move didn't just break their patterns, it rewrote the entire game. Walk forward knowing you're guided, protected, and unstoppable. Keep your light bright, your spirit strong, and your vision clear. This is your season of divine victory, and nothing can stand against what's already written for you.